Hello, and welcome to the How to Exit podcast, where we introduce you to a world of small to medium business acquisitions and mergers. We interview business owners, industry leaders, authors, mentors, and other influencers with the sole intent to share with you what it looks like to buy or sell a business. Let's get rolling. Hello and welcome to How to Exit. I'm here today with Arturo Henriquez. Arturo is a serial entrepreneur who has successfully started, bought, and sold over 55 national and international companies across 18 industries. Personally, from his own portfolio, primarily in the small business space, he's a sought-after consultant, coach, a two-time best-selling author, and public speaker for over 25 years. He's been involved in well over 130 business purchases, transaction engagements, and business deals over the course of his professional career. He's author of Buy Yourself into Entrepreneurship, Bypass the Startup Risk, and Buy into Business Ownership, and the dirty secrets to buying a business everyone is afraid to tell you. You don't need experience or to risk your own money to buy your first or next business. So, welcome, Arturo. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, where I always like to start is just kind of get the audience to know kind of who you are, what you stand for, and how you got into this business. Do you mind to give us just a tiny bit of an origin story of kind of how you
Sure.
got here?
Sure. So, back when I didn't know anything, back when I was 22, 23, fresh out of college, I had a great corporate career job. I'm from Mexico originally. I'm dual citizen, and NAFTA had just came on. And for a lot of people that don't know what NAFTA is, just a free trade agreement between Canada, Mexico, and the United States. But basically, I was in the banking industry, opening up Bank of America in Mexico. So for a 22-year-old, my career path, the corporate path, was going, like a Learjet going straight up, right? However, unfortunately for me, I had that entrepreneur itch. I needed to, my dad was an entrepreneur, my grandparents were entrepreneurs, and I thought I can make a lot more money. And so, me and a couple of friends and a cousin, we decided to go into the tequila space, all right? Because the tequila got the denomination of origin in this NAFTA treaty, and so only tequila could be produced in in Mexico, in certain regions of Mexico. And we thought that was just the perfect opportunity. Not going to get too involved into how we got into it. We got into it, and we had a tequila. We created a tequila company, a brand, and we started getting some headway. And creating a brand is, very well, it's very difficult. And so we packaged it, we designed it. The name came from a famous poem that Mexicans know. So we got instant brand, recognition, and we were ready to literally take over the tequila industry until we were not, right? Until the Jose Cuervos of the world, the Sausas of the world, the Herraduras of the world. These are the main tequila players, aside from Jose Cuervo, which is the big elephant in the room, said, who is this little company that's making this little noise? And they just, through money, they muscled us out. And we had no idea what to do. And after about a year, seeing our product on shelves, seeing customers buy our product, so having a product that was, being accepted by the market, we suddenly found ourselves out of a business. There's a lot more to it, but long story short, we didn't know what to do, how to react. We didn't have a business plan. We didn't have a marketing plan. We didn't know much about anything. And what was going to be an amazing journey, came to an abrupt end. Even though you could still find our tequila event, in some tourist, places in Mexico, that business, had a 1 year life, which is kind of akin to all the startup statistics, right? Most businesses fail. 90% of businesses fail within the first year. Well, we are now part of that statistic, and so that got me into the entrepreneur game, right? And then we started a couple other companies. Some went well. We went into the import export. We went into nightclubs. all for the wrong reasons again, because I'm a 23, 24, 25-year old who doesn't know much about anything. Was a little, was a shaker and dealer. But I was doing it because I went into the nightclub because I wanted to have the best seat at the house and be surrounded by beautiful women. Right, that was my motivator. It wasn't making money. It wasn't business plans. It was just, again, just an inexperienced, naive guy who got lucky. But we started these businesses, and the sweat and the resources and the emotional toll, with this one nightclub, it's capital intensive when you build a nightclub. It's all this build out, all this equipment, and we ran out of money. I put all my money into that nightclub, and I got lucky because I was able to bring a partner in. But the stress and anxiety of that, even at that age, it all comes with what it means to start a business. So, long story short, I decided to, a couple of years later, to start buying businesses and let somebody else take all that risk. Let somebody else, get emotionally attached. Let somebody else use their capital. Let somebody else, use their time and, all those risks that are not just financial. Let them do it. I'm going to mitigate. And once I find a business that's up and running and that's stable and that's profitable, then I go in there and I'll pay, two, three times earnings. And most of the times, and this is key, most of the times I'll pay less financially than what the original owner, actually ended up investing. Again, without all that emotional and time, um, risk. And so that's how I started getting into the game. And over 55 businesses later, 18 industries later, I'm still actively involved.
That's what appealed to me in this space is, I'm 49. I'll be 50 in a few weeks here in February, and I don't know if I've got another startup grind in me. Right, I did the .com boom back in California. I've been part of some of the, when 2000, I want to say 2000 ish came around. I worked for some of the bus companies. Right, I was in defense contracting. All my buddies were making a killing in the .com world. I thought I'm going to go join the .com world and become rich. I know computers better than most, and so I'll go do that. And I caught the bubble burst, so I got really good at like selling equipment, laying people off. It was kind of a miserable existence. And but I tried. We went. Even after that, I stayed in California for a little bit. Went from startup to startup, made some money with some of them, but no like huge home runs. But the 60, 80 hour weeks, I just don't have that in me at this age.
Right.
Like when I've tried to figure out what to do next, it wasn't, hey, go come up with an idea, build a team, pull 60 to 80 hour weeks, bootstrap it, put every penny in and every asset you have into it and see if it works. I was looking for something better, and I really believe this is there, right? You've got a proven business model, you've got revenue, you've got a team. Um, I'm kind of where you're at instead of building it. And I've had mine. I didn't do a tequila company, but I built an online dating site that cost me, let's just say it was six figures, in the high six figures. And everything I had in 401k, I liquidated everything to build this online dating service, to only to find out that they have a chicken and egg problem, right? Nobody wants to be the first lonely soul in a chicken, in a dating service. And without anybody there, nobody signs up, right? So you got the, like, who comes first, the audience or, somebody signing up. So that was and I, nobody would loan, or nobody would, the VC route wasn't interested in what we were doing. They just put out $125 million to eHarmony at the time.
Right.
And when I went, I mean, I spent a lot of money flying around and pitching VCs. They love the concept, they love what we're doing, and but it just didn't work. So I learned a very valuable lesson there too. Is there is a need in the space for startups and ideas and people to go out and cut a new space in a particular market. But that's not my space. My space is to go out and find something up, running, and working, and work with that. So let's jump right into kind of what are the things that you picked up? I mean, you've been doing this now. I think the thing said 25 years. Is that right?
If you count, the tequila days, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
about 25 years. I mean, really buying businesses and owning three to five businesses at any one time, probably about 15, 16 years now.
What would be one thing you wish you'd known at the beginning of this that you know now? What's the when you first decided to buy your first business? What did you not know at that time that you're pretty skilled at this time?
Well, the mystery, it's the mystery of the unknown, right? So think about this. I've been in 18 different industries. So of course I didn't know anything about any one of those industries prior to me buying a business into them, right? So had I been scared or feared the unknown, the mystery of I don't know anything about this industry, right? So the first thing we bought was a restaurant, right? And I'm not a cook, I'm not a chef. I remember the first week when we had just bought it, I had a panic attack because I'm like, well, how do they possibly come out with 100 dishes in a 15-minute span when this restaurant is full? How is that done? And everything perfect, right? Meaning, how does the production facility, which is their kitchen, produce all this in this timing with the same amount of quality? And I was scared to death because I didn't know. Of course, the process was already in place. The cooks and the bussers and the prep people were already in place. So the skilled labor was already in place. A system was already in place to allow that to happen, right? And so I didn't look at it that way. I looked at it as plates, and that was a big that was the biggest probably aha moment to me is I don't need to understand this. I need to understand that there's people that understand it. I don't need to be the expert, and I just need to concentrate on the actual business side of it. And that was a big catapult in because it took away that mystery, right? And I've since gone into theater companies. I've gone into oil and gas. I've gone into metallic fabrication facilities. I've gone into pest control. I know you own or you did own a pest control company. I've gone into the wildlife management side of pest control, which is a whole different ballgame, right? I've
Yeah.
owned pool companies. I've owned real estate companies. I've owned so many different other companies that I had no prior knowledge in them. Just like tequila, how do you produce tequila, right?
It's
I
from a
was
plant,
just
right? Agave
I was
or something like
I was just fearless
that.
back then, right? I was fearless. So the biggest one is anyone can do this. One, two, don't let your lack or your what you think is lack of experience, detain you, and understand that you're going to buy something that's already running prior to you buying it and will be running after you buy it.
Yeah, one of the things that happened on that big project I was telling you before we launched the podcast today is we got introduced to Dan Sullivan's book, Who Not How, right? And I don't know if you've read that one or seen that one, but he's got a book called Who Not How. And one of the beauties inside of that is anytime, one of the things he says inside of there is anytime you find yourself procrastinating or in fear of not knowing something, it's probably because you're not the right guy to be doing it. You probably should go find yourself a who. And the amusing side of that book is I was listening to it in the car, and I'm hearing impaired, so I always have headphones on, and my daughter was wearing the other set of headphones, and I didn't know I had them synced up. So sometimes I actually have my bone conduction on and the over the ear ones on. Well, she had my over the ear ones on. I had the bone conduction ones on. I didn't know they were synced up to play the same thing. And she was 4.5, 5 at the time, and she told mommy, she said, "Daddy's listened to Dr. Seuss." I said, "Dr. Seuss," and it says, "Yeah, he's listened to the Owl book." Hoo, right? But anyway, the beauty of that book is anytime now I figure out, like, wait a second, I don't know this industry very well. It's like, who do I know that does? I don't have to know these industries. I don't have to be the expert in something. I just need to know, like, is there already somebody on the team that knows that's going to stay? Or do I know somebody from outside of that looking for a cool project that wants to come in and be part of this? Right.
Right,
So
right,
I'm a
right.
big fan of that. Like, just find a who for that. And I love learning. So this really appeals to me in the realm that one day I'm looking at video production and crypto, and not crypto as the coin or anything, but crypto is in NFTs and all this other stuff. And the next day I'm looking at marketing agencies and, that it appeals to the ADD in me.
Yeah, the key here is not you don't have to be the skilled man. You don't have to be the or woman. You don't have to have those skills. We had an oil and gas company. This was a $70 million oil and gas company that did secondary and tertiary recovery. Trust me, I had no idea what that meant when I was buying that. Right, but all it is that they're going into older wells that have been you know clogged in and they're re-stimulating. That's all that means. um, it takes a lifetime, really a full career to understand geology, to understand oil, to understand the equipment, to understand the different players involved. Uh, There's absolutely no way, even while I owned the business for a couple of years, that I was ever going to be an expert in that. And that wasn't my role. My role is to understand it, understand the key the KPIs, the key indicators, what goes into those key indicators, making sure I have the right management team and the right people in the right seats, right? And then lead the strategy.
It's interesting. One of the guys I spoke to on either on the podcast or one of the mentors I've hired, he mentioned that a lot of people think business is a marathon or a sprint, and you got to run the whole race yourself in order to get the ribbon at the end. He said it's not; it's a relay. And what you really can do is just pick up the baton from somebody who's run 3/4 of a mile and run the last part of it for him and still
Yeah,
win. And that's what we're doing when we're buying an existing business. You're taking that baton, or that little wood or whatever they call that thing. I'm not a runner, but if you're taking over that responsibility of that company and taking it to the next level. And you don't have to be the guy who has a lifetime experience of the industry, a lifetime of knowledge in oil and gas, as you say. You could be the guy who just knows how to combine 15 other companies into it, or 5 other companies into it, make it 4 times, how to scale it a different way.
right.
And you know I've met quite a few people who have got into industries they had no idea about and got out of them and making life-changing amounts of money. Like we were talking a little bit earlier, I've done real estate. You do a real estate deal, you've got comfort money. You can make pretty decent money on that. If you do 3 or 4 deals a year, you can be really comfortable. You do 3 or 4 of these business acquisitions and mergers deals, in a short period of time, you could absolutely change your zip code. Um,
Right. A lot of people, you're absolutely right. A lot of people, you hear that, of course, online learning right now is on the rise, and there's a lot of courses out there and programs and teaching you how to get into different types of businesses, right? And they all talk about creating wealth, right? And that's key, wealth. And I know none of them understand the meaning of wealth, because one thing is to make money. Another thing is to change, have a life transformational experience, right? And when you make wealth, your life transforms, right? It's not just about making money. Making money doesn't transform your life. Achieving wealth. And yes, buying and selling businesses has that capacity. And I'll just use some simple math. If you get into a company that you buy at a 2.5 times, let's call it a 3 times multiple, and it's making $100,000, right, in free cash flow to the owner, just for the audience. So the price tag on that would be $300,000. That's how much it's going to cost you to buy that, 3 times $100,000, right? But if you're able to scale that to 200 or $500,000 in net profit, well, two things happen. One, you scaled it, so you're making more money, right? But that multiple is no longer three; it's now 4 or 5, right? So now it's 4 or 5 times 500 or 300, and so what cost you 300, now you're selling for 1.5 to 2 million. See, that's wealth. That's real wealth. That's life-changing wealth when you do that. And if you're able to do that a couple of times, because it's a simple formula, it's rinse and repeat when you buy a business. And I've done this in a couple of different formats, but you're changing your life, right? This is definitely, if you're listening to this, this is definitely something that anyone can do. That's a tried and true statement, and I know that because I've seen hundreds of different students from all walks of life come through our program. Anyone can do that, and yes, they have transformed their life, forever, um, in buying businesses. So
So, as you were picking up this, did you go out and read certain topics? Did you study the different models that are out there, like leverage buyouts, bank loans, and stuff? You came from the banking industry. What strategy did you start with inside of that realm?
yeah, well, it's the best type of structure is the LBO, right? The leverage buyout, and so but there's a lot behind what an LBO could be, right? It could be a combination of seller financing, it could be a combination of seller financing and asset based lending, it could be a partner, it could be so many different other things, an SBA loan, or a combination of all of the above and others, right? You can buy a percentage into the company, have control without having a majority with a purchase option. So you can get real creative, but it's all leverage, right? At the end of the day, everything that I just talked about is some form of leverage, right? And leverage allows you to multiply your earnings, multiply the value. So I started, with LBOs, right? I started using other people's money, whether it's a bank or the owner, or an asset-based lender, hard money lender, or another investor. Now, because I've done so many of these deals, some deals I do cash, some deals
Hmm.
I bring in an investor and we do cash, or we do a combination. So it's not always no money down, right? No money of my own down. Let me rephrase that. I'm not risking my own capital, right? Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not.
A lot of people don't understand that when you say no money down, or there's one of the mentors I hired was that Jeremy Harbor. He says $1 down. What he doesn't, what he's not saying is the owner doesn't get a dollar check, right? The owner's getting a check.
Sure.
Sometimes it's from deferred payment. Sometimes it's from selling some of the assets there. Sometimes it's from doing a sell lease back on the real estate that's underneath it. There's just all these different ways, but the owner gets a check. So when business when you hear that there's a no money down, I bought a business for no money down, doesn't mean the owner walked away without a check. It just means that the money didn't come out of your pocket necessarily, right? So I was
Correct.
working on one last year. I guess I was working on one last year where at the beginning we really thought, before due diligence, we thought we were going to have to come up with about 150 200K. Well, and it was in the construction space. I reached out. We found a gentleman who had grown a similar business 100x from when he started to when he left the company, and he wants to be his own CEO and he wanted to buy something. We were working with him to put in that money and to have him run this business, do what he did with the previous one, right? And do a work for equity type of thing, to where he starts off with a little equity, and over the years, if he hits his performance goal, he had owned substantial piece of that business before we got to an exit and sold it. And fortunately, doing the due diligence, we found lots of problems, and there wasn't going to be any money required. Unfortunately, we found so many problems that the IRS blocked the sale of the business because they owed the IRS nearly $960,000.
Wow.
And
Wow.
we're going to court. They had this court mediator, and they told the IRS that the offer we made, we were going to buy the business, no money down, basically a dollar deal, and take over $4.5 million worth of debt on a construction company in the construction space. Oklahoma is small enough. I don't want to say what industry it's in, but they built products for the construction industry, and they had $4.5 million of debt. We were going to take over that and take over this 60-year-old company. The IRS said, no, not until you pay us off. You're not transferring assets or anything. So I don't know if that deal will ever come back around, but they have to straighten out their IRS issues because
Sure. Sure.
yeah. But yeah, during due diligence, you'll find a lot of things there. So uh, one of the favorite questions I always have is, what is kind of a myth inside of this industry that you just wish didn't, you could dispel right now? Like there's a common, every industry has them. They're like, there's things that people believe that are not necessarily true, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
inside of the buying and selling of businesses.
Yeah. Two of them are direct. One is you need money. You don't necessarily need money. No, you don't. Now, is it harder? Of course, it's harder, right? If you can, whip out a check for $100,000, well, of course, it's easier. But you don't need money, and most of the students that have come into my program don't have money. They don't have a bunch of savings, tucked away. So they have to be creative, and we teach them how to be creative so they can buy businesses. So that's one. And the second one is that you have to have prior experience, right, in business. And again, that's a big myth. And I'll use the restaurant example again. I didn't know how to manage a restaurant. I didn't know how to cook a sandwich, make a sandwich for myself in my own kitchen, let alone manage a restaurant. And so I didn't know what prepping meant. I didn't know, the different terms. You have the morning and in between you have this prepping so that they're making food or raw material for those plates that you see. And that may be naive for me, but they're making it for the week. They're ordering two or three times a week in certain products, and so these little things that go in, into running a restaurant, I had no idea, no way of knowing, and why would I know? The point being is, had I fallen or into the fear or the mystery, I would never have bought my first business. I would never bought my first restaurant, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. And so I didn't have prior experience. You do not need prior experience. And here's the key: that fine-tuned symphony, which is what it takes to run a business. We talked about starting a business. To start a business, you have to have so many variables, come together in place at the same time, like a fine-tuned symphony, right? And if one of those variables, messes up, one of those instruments hits the wrong note, then that music is going to sound terrible, right? Well, the same thing with the starting a business. If everything doesn't fall into place, then that business is not going to be successful. When you buy a business, you're buying a fine-tuned symphony. It's already, all the instruments are already playing beautiful music. Can it be improved? Absolutely. Can you put a little oil in the trumpet, or get a better drum set? Or absolutely, you can do things like that. Can you get a better musician? Absolutely, you can. And that would make the symphony better. That would make the business better, right? But all of those pieces are already in place, and that's why you don't need experience, because that, again, I mentioned it before, that business was running before you bought it, and that business is going to be running after you bought it, because processes are already in place, the product and the service are already accepted in the market, right? The people that need to run the various different aspects of the business are already in place, right? There's a brand that's already established, there's market share, and here's the key: it's profitable. If you're looking for profitable businesses, which is what I do, I stopped doing the distressed assets, and we can talk about that here in a second. But I buy good, solid, profitable businesses, and so I don't need the experience of a restaurant. I don't need the experience of oil and gas. I don't need the experience of a theater company. I don't need the experience of a fabrication or pest control, because somebody's already. If it's a business, that's in place. I do, once I buy it, have to understand it, right? But again, nothing's for free in life, right? So you do have to roll up your sleeves at some point, but that's none of those are impediments to buying a business.
Interesting is one of the industries I avoid are restaurants just because they historically have a high failure rate and a low profit margin. Knowing what you know now, would you buy another restaurant?
Absolutely. So even I'll up that. Um, my best deal has been a bar. So if a restaurant's risky, a bar is riskier, right? And had I gone into it with that mindset of, I don't want to be in this industry, right? So we teach our students, you have to have a deal criteria, right? You can't be
Mhm.
throwing darts kind of in the dark. You have to know why, what kind of business you want, what industry, and the whys, right? What are your objectives? What do you want to do? It's a whole objectives and deal specifications. So a lot of people put industries as industries they don't want to go in, and we challenge them. Just like I challenge myself, would I go into the bar industry? Because bar means alcohol, bar means late night, bar means things that most people don't want to be involved in. However, we found the right bar with the right management team that had the right longevity, meaning it's been in business for over 9, 10 years, a good management team in place. We bought the bar and the real estate, and we sold it 15 years later. I made my money back within 9 months.
Right.
It's been one of the best deals financially ever. It's been probably one of the deals that I've been most absentee from. We put in a couple of minor processes in place, little tweaks, and we had not weekly, monthly meetings. And again, this is one of these high turnover, these industries that. So uh, I try not to have these limiting criteria now because I have a depth of knowledge, of course, and experience. But I would also challenge a lot of people to look past the idiosyncrasies of what you think an industry has, the good and the bad, and look at the deal. Look at the deal more than the industry. And you're probably going to get a lot of duds in industries that tend to be difficult. Okay, so you know that up front, but you may find a couple of gems like I have.
It's interesting is never owned a restaurant. My wife has a degree in hospitality management. Um, so when she was going through there, where and I have a master's in marketing. When she was going through there and studying that, and she was telling me that, well, the average restaurant has a profit margin of 3 to 5%. I was like, I already decided then. I was like, I'll never own a restaurant. Now bars are better if you actually can put a bar inside of your restaurant. That's a lot of times that's your profit center, right? The alcoholic beverages have a much higher profit margin
Yeah,
than
but but so
the food. But
so we own a bakery right now, right? That's one of the
mhm,
businesses we own. We bought this in 2015. It's a restaurant.
mhm,
We added beer and wine. It's a French bakery.
mhm,
It's a very well known brand. It's a stable business, right? So that's
yeah,
why we bought it, right? So other restaurants may be up and down, right? The beer and wine aspect to it didn't do much to it, right? The people are going to that bakery because of its core business, which is baked goods, and it's got a bistro to it.
mhm,
Yes, the beer and wine is going to add a little bit more marginal profit, but it's not going to change the business, right? So when you make that statement, if you add things, will it transform? That was my interpretation of the statement.
right.
Uh, you should buy it for the core, right? Whatever business you buy, whether it's restaurant or not, you should buy it for the core product that it has, and you can obviously make it better, right? But we've done this and we failed miserably. We turned a bar into a restaurant and we lost half our patrons.
It's interesting. I was looking at a brewery because I don't even like beer that much. I like wines, but breweries are kind of the hip thing, and I think it would be cool to own it. And this facility was really cool. It had all the stainless steel gear. It was a brewery with a bar in the front of it, so you could see the brewery was behind glass. You could see everything. Unfortunately, the where they put this thing, it had and for Oklahoma, it had a crazy lease. I think the lease was like 15K a month, and the math just didn't work out. That's the reason the reason they're even selling it was they set up a bigger brewery that they could sell their microbrew to, or I mean they could sell their bottles and stuff out of, but they didn't have any interest in running the restaurant operation side of it and the big visible, piece. But the numbers didn't work. So I'm of the mind that I look at the numbers before I look at anything,
Correct.
right? There are some industries where I avoid just because of the regulations and problem. I'm in Oklahoma, right? Cannabis is huge here. There's a dispensary on every corner. There's more dispensaries on the way home than there are gas stations and stuff. It's just crazy. I live out in the middle of nowhere. Right, it's 27 miles from my office. I live out by a lake. I cross from the time I leave the latest place to get groceries, like a Walmart, to my house. I cross one, two, three, four, five, six dispensaries before you can get groceries, right? So, but I don't touch that just because of the federal regulation around it. I think they're a little oversaturated. There might be a play to do some type of roll up, combine them all, do like a 7-Eleven of them where everything's in the same place or whatever. I have no moral obligation to or against the industry. I'm concerned that still federally it's not okay.
Right.
And considering I play on some projects that are big, international and stuff, I can't have that risk boiling over to the other teammates that I have on those bigger projects because I decided to, do something that's only okay in a few, a few of the states. So,
Yeah. Well,
um,
and that's, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's important for you to have your deal criteria, right? There's
right.
no right or wrong. There's no right answer or wrong answer. That's your deal criteria based on your objectives, your risks, profile, your experience, whatever comes behind that deal. And that's fine. That's great. What I do tell people though, like we've had chefs, for instance, come into our program to buy a business, right? They're chefs. They're dreaming about owning the restaurant. And so they're convinced that they're not going to start a restaurant, they're going to buy one. Right? So they come into our program and they're dead set on buying a restaurant. And we challenge them through this deal criteria, deal specification exercise. Why? Because when you start prioritizing the reasons why you're buying a business, to scale, to have more freedom, um, uh, to use my experience, to whatever, you know, some of them are going to come into conflict, right? Hey, I want more freedom, more time with my family over the weekends. Well, don't buy a restaurant because that's your busiest times, right? So pick one. What's more important? And so most of the chefs that have come in, or restaurateurs, have said they want to scale a business. And immediately we say, you understand that a restaurant and retail in general, by capacity, by two types of capacity, by physical capacity, is limited, and by production capacity, there's only so much kitchen equipment and kitchen space to produce X. So by the true sense of the word, you cannot scale a restaurant. You can't. You can maybe grow revenue a little bit or make the profit a little bit by being more efficient, but that's it. The only way to scale it is to open a second one, and that's starting a new business. Even if it's your brand or whatever, it's starting a new business. And so once
Right.
we take these chefs through this exercise, I'd say 90% of the ones that have come here end up buying something different. So they come in here prioritizing their skill set and their passion as number one, and they end up buying something completely different because scaling now becomes number one, right? Time with my family becomes number one, or number two, or number three. And that's using your skill set or your passion is not as important, because everybody's number one, whether they admit it or not, is to make money. That's why they're buying a business.
The entrepreneur in me says that there's a missing in that in the industry, um, but I'll never start it. So I'm going to share it. There's like I don't like to share ideas I might kick off in the next year or so, but because this would be starting a business, not buying one, I'll share it. I personally think there's a huge opportunity for personalized chefs like house cleaning services. Right, it's not as common as house cleaning, but if you really look into it, it's not that much more expensive to actually have somebody come to your house, cook your meals for the week. And I think if the right person got behind that, they could actually grow that, scale that, and kind of have. I don't know if you're familiar with like the Seeking Sitters model. That was a local Tulsa company that just created a national franchise out of babysitting because they did background checks and did marketing for them, and they would show the sitters would show up with their T-shirts. I think you could do something similar like to a Mary Maid or a Seeking Sitters for personal chefs. You could normalize that, but that's a startup and that's 60 hours a week, and I'm not doing it. But for your chef people who are just determined to be in that space, I think is a missing there. I think that I got exposure to it when I travel. I used to travel to Dallas all the time to do this self development program, and we'd be down there for 3 or 4 days at a time. And they really don't give you time to go out and eat, so you're always like getting stuff at Chick-fil-A and fast food. And my health, that is not good for my health. I'm not a healthy guy anyway. So I started hiring a personal chef to make me food for the weekend. Her name was Cinnamon, and she was amazing. And but it wasn't that expensive. It was cheaper, I think, to actually do that than to go. You try to run out to a restaurant real quick. When you add in the travel time, the gas, the tips, the everything, it was cheaper to have her prep my meals for me.
Right, right,
And once she learned what I liked, she was awesome, right? Like, I'd have, my meals were throwing the micro like Tupperware things. I throw them in the microwave, they were ready, and it was gourmet chef quality. I think there's a huge play in that. I don't know if there's something to buy in that space and turn it into that. But I've always kept my eye open because I think there's an unmet need, but I think it would be expensive to market. So one of the reasons I don't just go out and hire 100 of personal chefs and start marketing them is that's a startup, right?
Mm.
That's
I want to add to that, but we could do this off the interview.
okay. There goes my
um,
ADD. I took us into the entrepreneurial realm. So all right, cool. Um, So we brought this up a couple times. I know what my criteria is, right? I know I want companies that are older than 5 years. I want there's a certain revenue model. I lean towards recurring revenue. Like once I land a customer, I want them to come back to me. That's why the reason I like pest control is every spring and fall. If you've got ants crawling up the side of your wall, I can take care of them. But chances are a new colony is going to move in next spring, and you're going to call me back because I did a good service, right? I like to win a customer over and have them over and over again. So that's the type of stuff I look for. Um, that's just personal preference. I think they're easier to grow and scale. What would you do, for and you don't have to give your program away, but kind of give us the high level of what is the thought process of developing out that buying criteria is something that you would think would be a good business for somebody to buy.
Yeah. There's the personal aspect as to why, right? The why are you buying a business is obviously money is one, but is it, to get out of your corporate job? Is it because you're a freelancer? Is it because, like yourself, you were in the real estate game, but you wanted to, up your game and buy, there's the why, right? So you have to be clear on that. But that why also has consequences, right? If I want to buy a business and I'm in a corporate job with a 9 to 5, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and I want to buy a business but I want to spend the same amount of time with my family, then that's going to limit certain businesses, right? So that decision, you have to you understand that that's going to some businesses are going to fall into that, some aren't, right? So that decision has its own consequences, right? So you got to get clear on the personal side, and there's a whole exercise we do on that, and they got to get clear on the actual business side, right? So once I'm clear on the why personally, well, am I willing to travel 10 miles? Am I willing to travel 30 miles? Am I willing to uh, get on a plane and travel to another city or state? For instance, am I willing to go into this industry or that industry? Right? Do I want to use my skill set? Do I have a certain passion that I want to pursue? And these are all, the chef scenario was a perfect example. They wanted to use their skill set and do something that they were passionate about. But they also wanted to scale a business, right? And so that conflicted. And so it's these type of things. And my personal one is price to earnings, and that's because I understand it. Right, a lot of guys that come into a lot of people that come into our program, they're not too clear as to what price to earnings are, multiples and whatnot, and we teach them that. But I know that I'm not going to pay more for a business from a multiple standpoint because I'm industry agnostic. So if I see and I get 10 to 12 deals a day that come across my desk in some fashion, the first thing I look at is price to earnings, and if it's in my range, I'll look at it more. If it's not, there's next. I don't care because there's no personal emotional attachment to an industry. There's no personal emotional attachment to a passion or a skill set, which liberates me to look at good deals that I probably would not have seen had I had those, those conditions, so to speak.
It's interesting. I really like that. I used to teach the guys that would come and want to learn how to do real estate. I was like, quit falling in love with houses. I've never seen a house that gets me excited. I'm not excited by bricks, mortar, sticks, nails, and glue, which is where houses are, and some glass, right? Stone. That doesn't excite me at all, right? Numbers, right? A business side of it, that's interesting to me. I'll pay attention to that. And I've had so many people, even mentor students that would come to me and go, but I love this house. I so would like to live in it. And I was like, yeah, you're going to pay the wrong price for it then, right? I like that. I'll adopt that as I'll do my best never to fall in love with a business, right? Like it's really cool. It's really exciting. It's sexy or
Yeah.
whatever the word you want to use. The numbers are what you should be, in my world, the numbers are what should make me excited, right? Does it make sense? Does it make money? Right? Does it make dollars? And at that point, the other thing I really like what you said in there is like the time requirement. One of my personal criteria is that I don't buy anything that needs me. meaning that I'm going to have to work, 30, 40 hours and to turn this thing around or fix something.
Right.
You know, I like things that I could add, but that would benefit from my presence, but not that absolutely, like I'm going to have to go in and do X, Y, Z myself.
Sure. Sure.
Don't buy. I have a wife and two kids. They like to see me occasionally. I'm not looking forward to buying another job. I did that with the pest control company, by the way. I bought that as a favor to one of my relatives, and it's another job. It was way too small. So now I'm looking for a bigger one local. So if you're in Tulsa and you have a pest control for a company for sale, give me a call. Anyway, that was not meant to be a commercial, but hey, um, I like the idea of like the business would succeed and could be managed even if I wasn't there. My job is to improve it, right? So the not buying myself another job is important to me. And it may not be important for a lot of other people, especially if you're single, you don't have two kids at home at that, I have a 5 year, now I'm getting them wrong. December is birthday month, so now they're 6 and 11. So I have a 6 year old and an 11 year old, and still cool in their eyes, right? I'm not so cool with the 11 year old anymore, but he's getting at that stage where he'd rather play his video games than hang out with daddy and go fishing. But the 6 year old, I'm the king of the world to that little princess, so I don't want to waste any of that time.
Sure.
So not looking for any type of business that requires me 50 or 60 hours a week. That's just not going to happen. There
Right.
are a lot of opportunities out there that would run better without you, right?
Right.
You get to put input in, you find the people that can run them better than you, and they would probably just do better if you stay out of their way. That's what I'm looking for.
All right. So if you go into the small business space, right, most companies are owner operated, even if they're 5 million, $10 million companies, right? They're still the owner is still very much involved. We have a program that teaches owners how to go from being an operator to a CEO, right? Working on the business, not in the business. And here's the thing, though: if you go into it looking for absentee run businesses, which is what you're kind of describing, or semi absentee run businesses, there's going to be very few that you're going to find, right?
Right.
Because most of them are owner operated. That's just the reality. Um, but here's the key: can you take a business that's owner operated and make it into a non owner operated business, and thereby creating more value, right? When you exit, and absolutely you can, and that's what we do. We'll take an owner operated business. We'll find a management team. We'll make it more efficient. We'll find that extra cash to pay them, and step out and be strategic. We do that all the time, and we teach people how to do this as well, right? Owners of small businesses, and so that way you're not limiting yourself to a very very small, a small amount of businesses out there that are currently being run absentee or semi-absentee, right?
Yeah, I identified that early on. So the first thing I look for is there somebody there, like a general manager? Is there somebody there that's like technically could run the business and should be running the business? Could probably do a better job than the owner. It's a fresher set of eyes that just needs a little bit of promotion and a little bit of guidance? Or is there often a smaller business that's competing that's run better? Like in that construction space, when we were looking at it, it was third generation, and forgive me if you're listening to this, is very poorly run. The two young ladies, or no young ladies, are older than me. The two ladies were looking to retire that were running it. It was the daughters or the granddaughters of the original founders, and they just weren't doing a very good job of keeping it market, all this other stuff. There's lots of excuses, but it wasn't being ran very well. Yet there was a company that did the exact same product line 40 miles away for sale for a third of the cost. It was run incredibly well, right? You're
Right.
talking their company was generating 10 to 12 million dollars a year, and their net profit was 30 to $40,000. They were pissing away every penny they got their hands on, right?
Wow.
The other company was generating, a 30% profit margin. So my goal was I was already in discussion with both of them. I wasn't about get them both to sell, and then have the guys running the very well ran one run the whole operation over time, like integrated in. But
Sure.
that's what I look for is like, find something that's really well run, and then find something that needs a little help, and then kind of put them together and make them work better.
Yeah, it's
So
smart.
I think
Yeah.
there's opportunities to get around it without giving myself a 60-hour job. Now I say that I still pull lots of hours, and I would be willing to do it for the first few months, but my objective would be to, as fast as possible, find somebody who could do that better than me.
Yeah, yeah, and get
So
yourself out, right? Don't correct. Absolutely. I mean, that's what we do. When I buy a business, first couple of months, I'm involved. I'm
yeah,
definitely involved because I two things need to happen. One, I need to make sure that the management and the processes are as good as I need them to be. But also, I need to understand the pulse of the business and the KPIs of the business so that I can monitor it remotely as an absentee owner. So you need
I
both, right?
I call that developing my BS meter, right? I need to know enough about the business and everything to know how it's going, how it's, I need to know enough about the business, the industry, and everything to know if some BS is going on, right?
Yeah.
There's a meter like KPIs and all that stuff. But you got to know enough about it to understand: is it on track? Is it not? Is the owner, is the management telling you the truth? There's something that just doesn't fit. And if you don't get in and spend some time, I can see where it'd be really hard to develop that meter, that gut instinct about the company. So yeah, I'm on board with that. We've been on the call now on the podcast now for 50 some odd minutes. One of the questions I want to get before we wrap this up is, I ask a lot of questions. We talked about a lot of topics, but if you were sitting in this seat and you were asking questions and I was answering them, what questions should I have asked? What have I missed here?
Yeah, I think the big one is how much how much knowledge do you need, technical versus the art of the deal, right? What weighs more, and and the answer to me is the art. The art by far is the most important aspect of buying a business. The technical stuff, how to write an LOI, how to value a business, how to perform a due diligence, the technical aspects of it, how to structure it. Simple. They're not that hard. How to read financial statements. You don't need to understand accounting. You just need to understand how to interpret them. You can find a bunch of YouTube videos and get that. It's the art, right? It's the psychology of the seller. It's the psychology of the intermediary, the business broker, whomever's in the process. The psychology of the lawyers from the seller side, lawyers from your side, the accountants that you're going to eventually use, the psychology of the management team if you're able to meet them. And most importantly, it's the psychology of the seller and the intermediary. That's going to guide whether you have a great win-win, awesome structure, or whether things are going to fall apart if you don't figure that out. And that's art. That's experience. You don't get that from a YouTube video. You don't. It's not like revenues minus expenses equal net profit. I get it now. No, so the art of the deal has been really the reason why we've been so successful across the years. So if you're thinking about buying a business, get someone that has that sense, that understanding, because that's the real crux. That's the real magic sauce right there. It's not reading the financials or valuing a company or doing the due diligence or reading financial statements or any of the technical aspects. It's the art.
Awesome. So I've heard you say a few times about mentoring and what you teach and stuff. Do you currently have a program going on?
We do. We do. We
Uh,
we 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 launched it back in 2018.
Cool. I've got a couple points of contact for how would somebody contact you if they wanted to learn how to do this, how to be in this space from you? What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Sure, sure, sure. There's two websites. One is called Business Action Now. So www.businessactionnow.com. And the
Okay.
second one is ArturoHenriquez.com. So it's my first and last name, and there's a link there as well. And then there's contact form. So either one is a good way to reach us and start learning about this journey.
So for those of you guys who are watching this on the video version, I put that up on the screen. I get to verify I have that right. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
Awesome. And then the other one I have here too. So just so people can see it, it's simply his name. That one, correct?
There it is. Correct.
We'll leave that up for a few seconds there. And so I appreciate having you on here. We are going to wrap up the show. Hang out when we get off here. You and I will chat for a couple of minutes after the show. Is there any parting message you want people to hear or to know?
No, just you don't need experience, you don't need capital, and buying a business, you're going to save yourself a lot of headaches than starting a business. I'll leave those parting words there.
Awesome. Well, thank you, and we look forward to hearing from you again in the future. So
Thank you.
we'll
Thank you
end
for
this now.
having me.
The Investors and Entrepreneurs Professional Mastermind. The Investors and Entrepreneurs Professional Mastermind combines the traditional peer-to-peer mastermind introduced first in Napoleon Hill's famous book, Think and Grow Rich, with accountability partnering, where your peers help you ensure that you set goals, take actions, and get results. If you want to scale, blow past roadblocks, and achieve success faster than you might think is possible, I suggest you take a visit over to tiepm.com. That's tiepm.com and check out the Investors and Entrepreneurs Professional Mastermind.